So how does Plan Together do this? Well, there's two main kind of controls that we have in the system. One I call theory of constraints. Most of you have heard of it. Eli Goldratt wrote the goal, basically wrote a story about the theory of constraints, basically protecting and optimizing your bottleneck against variability. Nothing matters more than your bottleneck. You can't starve the bottleneck. You want to keep your work flowing to the bottleneck, right? I put Jeff Bezos up there because the goal is a required reading by all of the Amazon executives. So that must mean it's good, right? Must mean it's the way to go. Well, look, here's kind of how it works, right? So the whole idea with a scheduling software is, when do we release the work to be scheduled, right? Hey, it's due on Friday. Do we want to schedule on Thursday, on Wednesday, on Monday? Do we want to schedule it a month before it's due? Well, we've got controls over that, and we call them buffers. So we've got shipping buffers in our schedule. We've got inventory and drum buffers. So we can control these levers and tell Plan Together when to schedule the work. Do we schedule it 7 days before it's due? Do we try, to release it 7 days before it's due? Do maybe we bring the POs in a week before they're due to be consumed? That sort of thing. And what's great about Plan Together is we have something called the drum buffer, which is more of a dynamic buffer in the system that looks at your bottlenecked resources, your constrained resources, and can create a buffer into those resources so that we don't starve them. That's the idea. So let's see. The next piece, so that was theory of constraints, kind of when do we release the work to be scheduled? And the second piece is, like we talked about before, this sequencing. So we've released all this work to be scheduled this week, but now we want to know what order do we put this work in? And that's where inside Plan Together we call optimization. So we have sliders in Plan Together. It's very easy that let you set your priorities, right? So let's pretend like we've got these 5 orders at the bottom of the screen here. Which order do we want to sequence them in? Well, maybe we want to group like products together. So there's a slider for that. You can group your products together or groups of products together. Or you can sequence by reducing change over time. There's lots of different ways to do it. And you simply set these sliders, and I'll show you that when we get into the software demo. You run your optimization, and you get your result. Right? And I should say it is significantly shorter than 19.2 years. Most of our optimizations, depending on the data, can take anywhere from a couple of seconds to, have I ever seen anything? Probably never seen anything over a minute. Depends on the data load, but obviously the more data and more calculations, the longer it takes. But for a normal sized company that we have, a standard sized company, probably 3,000 to 4,000 orders. It only takes a couple of seconds to run our optimization. A little bit about data flow before we get into the software. So let's start with the groups of data that we have. I mean, there's Plan Together, obviously, it needs to know your capabilities and the capacity that you have in your facility, but it also likes to know your inventory level so it can do some constraining by what's on hand and what purchase orders are coming in, that sort of thing. So I like to think of it as 3 buckets of data. So you've got your resource objects, your inventory objects, and your job objects. So resource objects are, what resources are available, what are the capabilities of those resources, what work centers are they in. You've got your inventory objects, like, what are your lead times or any attributes on items, the color or the tools they use, that sort of thing, where they're stored, what their on-hand inventory levels are at this point in time, and what are the supply and demand of those? What are the purchase orders that are coming in? What are the sales orders that you have? And even what are the forecasts that you have against those items? And then really what ties the two of those together are your jobs, your routes, right? So what are your open production orders? What do your operations look like? What are the cycle times? What are the setups on those? And that sort of thing. And then the typical data flow, which we'll get into the next screenshot here, is you've got your ERP out there. Plan Together uses a SQL server to stage data. And so we typically will pull data out of the ERP, put it into a SQL Server database, and then pull it into Plan It Together. Plan It Together is multi-client, so you can have one server, multiple clients connected to it, and that's kind of how the data works between the server client. So just a little typical ERP Plan It Together workflow. The blue being some of the Plan It Together actions. So typically, this is how something would happen. There'd be a demand signal inside the ERP. You can run planning in your ERP system and get some firmed production orders. Firmed or planned production orders are fine. We would bring those in to Plan It Together. Plan It Together would do its scheduling. It would, allocate material to those orders all at the same time. And then what we typically do is we'll send data back to the ERP. We'll send back production order start dates, stop dates, what resource they're running on, that sort of thing. And so that will feed back into your ERP. It will help you run your MRP process more smoothly, and just that you have all the data set up in there. So that's kind of the workflow. We won't get into it in the demo here, but Plan It Together can also generate planned orders for you. So if you find that your ERP system is not doing a great job of planning the orders that you need to make, and maybe you can, you've got multiple level bombs and you'd like to, have constraints at each level of the bomb to determine what orders you should make and do different batching in that sense. Plan It Together is really great at that as well. So if you're interested in that, please reach out. We can have a discussion about it. All right, so let's get into the software demo. The outline here is we're going to do some general navigation. I'll flip back and forth to the slides so we can see, but general navigation, what does it look like, how it's set up? We'll identify there's a lot of colors inside Plan It Together, so we'll identify bottlenecks, how we do that, on-time delivery issues. We'll talk about optimization and sequencing and changeovers, how you can manually control the schedule. I think a lot of people think that, when they implement an APS system, that they're going to hit a button, it's going to give them a perfect schedule. And while that is the dream, it rarely is like that. What we like at Plan It Together is we I would say more than an 80-20 rule, I'd give it a 90-10 rule. You hit the optimization button, your schedule is going to get 90% perfect for you, and then we give you the opportunity to manually manipulate that schedule and make it exactly the way you want to run it, right? So that's the idea. So I'll talk about some manual control that we have in the system, and then we'll look at other types of constraints like materials, material management, shortages, and of course we'll talk about running what-if scenarios and something we call capable to promise, or CTP, getting an order quote when you don't have an actual order in your ERP system.